Hey guys, welcome here. In this lecture I get you familiar with constructors. In this lecture we'll continue and we'll talk more about this context and arrow functions. Let's start, let's navigate to playground.js. Maybe we need to clean it up a little bit, so let's scroll down here and actually we can remove this print user info like this, and I will create here different functions. One normal function and one arrow function, and let's remove also these comments here. So first I'll create these functions down here just under a class. Okay, so I'll create here a function. All right, and let's call this function, let's say print the message. All right, and let's say we'll get here a message. Okay, so message here, perfect, and just let's console log out this message. Okay, so there is a normal way how you writing functions, but there is also other way you can use arrow functions. Okay, so I can say here const print the message, and I will assign to print the message arrow function. So like this arrow function. Now I'm writing arrow function syntax. I can get here message, and I can simply console log out here this message. Okay, equally the same. Alright, when your arrow function has only one parameter, you can omit these brackets. So I can remove these brackets and I can just keep here a message. If I would have here multiple parameters, I need to have here this. Okay, so maybe I would have here ABC like this, then I need to have here these brackets. But when I have here only one parameter, I can omit this bracket and I can write my arrow function just like this. And it will be print message too. Okay, now let's commit this and we can try it out. So let's say print message. So print message, and let's say here normal message, and here will be print message too, and this will be arrow message. Arrow message like this. Let's save this. Let's go back to our browsers. Let's refresh. And you should see normal in your console log. Okay, let's see what's here. Print message. Print, okay, I have a typo in my print message. Let's get back here, print message like this. Alright, now it should be alright. Let's get it back. And let's see, alright, so I'll refresh, clear this out, and now you can see normal message, arrow message, everything is working. Perfect. Alright, let's go back to our coding editors. There is also one more benefit of an arrow function. Let's say your function is returning some value. Let's say our print message will be not printing any message, but will be returning this message here, or maybe we'll add something to the message. So actually, let's return here this string hello or a message, or let's change it for a greeting. Yeah, that will be better name. Let's say display greeting. All right, like this, and this will be display greeting too, like this. And here I will display in the parameters, I will get here, let's say, greeting param. All right, and here will be also greeting param, and I will return from here greeting plus, and let's say space and a plus, and let's say here my name, Philip. Okay, you can also use here interpolation if you want. So of course I told you about interpolation, so you can write here backticks, and you can get here $sign curly brackets, you can interpolate greeting, now space and Philip. I don't think this is much readable. Okay, I can do the same here, so I can return exactly the same stuff here. But now, when your function has a return here, just a one expression, I can return this by default by removing return from here. So I can completely remove return. And now I can just remove these curly brackets. And this is returning this value automatically. Alright, so this is the same as writing this function here. And now you can really see how arrow functions can be beneficial when you need to just maybe do some quick computation and return it straight away. You can just write here simple one-liner instead of writing here multiple lines in a normal function. Alright, so this is a normal way function, this is the arrow syntax. You will see now when I will display here greeting, everything will be working. So I will be display greeting here and display greeting too. Here I will display greeting, let's say hello, and here will be hola. All right, let's save this. Let's go back to our browsers. Okay, let's refresh. And let's see, okay, let's refresh, and actually we are not, okay, of course we are not displaying anything because we are returning from here. So if you want to display, you need to wrap it inside of a console log, because these functions are returning now these values. So you can imagine this function will return the first value, this will be hello Philip, and then it will console log out hello Philip. So I will wrap also here console log like this. Let's save this, let's go back to our browsers. Now you should see here hello Philip, hola Philip. Of course, you can assign these values to some variable and then console log out, or you can console log out it straight away. Okay, so this is a normal function, arrow function. There is also one very important benefit with the binding of this context, and I would like to create here now example of this benefit. So here we can leave these functions, or we can comment them out. So normal versus arrow. All right, I will comment this out. And now I will start creating here some code. Maybe it will be harder to understand from the start, but we will debug this code and I will explain you exactly what does it do. No worries, if you don't understand it straight away, you will understand it after for sure. So under person class, I will create a new class and I will call it database. Let's say I would like to create a database where I would like to store my persons. Okay, so I will simply create here a class, let's call it database. And database will contain items. So member variable of a database will be items where I can store my persons. So items, we didn't talk much about arrays, but no worries, we'll be talking about arrays in the next lectures, and I will explain you how arrays are working. Array is just a collection of a data. Okay, so for now, items will be just an empty array. You can write the array by writing square brackets. So items is an empty array, and then I would like to create here function save. So save will be function to save data to our database. Okay, and a save data will expect to receive here a callback function to get the data. So I will get here function get data callback. All right, this can be a little bit harder to understand because you don't see the other part of the code, but just keep writing and I will explain it after. So get the data callback. And I will create here a variable called data, and I will assign here get data callback. So get data callback, and I will call it because callback will be a function that will return a data I would like to push to items. If you want to get data into your items array, you just can call here items, and on the array you have available function push. Then you can get your data and you can push them inside of the items of this array here. So simply push them inside of this. And of course, you need to call here this item since we are in your class and you want to access items on this class. All right, so we have our simple database, and now let's create our person code. So under here, under print something, I will create a new function and I will call this persist. So persist like this, and I will get here database. So normal function, write here normal brackets, curly brackets for a function body, and let's expect to get here database object. So database object like this. On database, you have an accessible function save, right? So I can call here database dot save, and now I need to provide here callback function because save is expecting to receive callback function. Okay, so I will write here a function like this. All right, and now I want to return from here object because this function should return object I would like to store in my database. So I already return, I want to return from here object like this, and I want to specify on this object only username and the age. So let's write here username. This will be my first name plus last name, so username like this. Let's write here interpolation, so backticks and now curly brackets and this first name space $, curly brackets again, this last name. All right, let's write here comma, this is a username, and now age, and the age will be this age like this. All right, so let's continue. Our persist is finished, our save is finished, and now let's go down here. Let's uncomment this code, so we will create our person1 and a person2. And we need to also create a database. So first one we will create a database, so const, let's call it the db equals, let's create here instance of a database, so new database, amazing. And now we can call here our person1 dot persist, and we can provide here database And then we can call here person2 dot persist, and we can provide here our database. Now, just to verify we are saving our data to a database, I will just write here console log, and I will get here database dot items. All right, let's write debugger in front of this. Okay, so one debugger will be here. Let's write a debugger inside of a save function, and also one debugger inside of this persist, and one debugger inside of a function we are passing inside of a save. Like this. There is a lot of debuggers, but we need to really debug this code so you will understand this completely. Let's save everything. Let's go back to our browsers. And we can refresh our page. So let's refresh this, and you should get inside of a debugger. And we are already created person1 and a person2. So you can see here person1 with these details, person2 with these details here. And we are just before calling persist function. Okay, so on a person1 you can see persist function is actually under proto. All of your functions are here under proto, so you can see persist, print something, print user info. All right, and you are providing database. Okay, so up here, actually we have a typo here. Straight away I am writing here database, but I created instance of a DB, so that's wrong, my mistake. Let's go back very fast. So since we are specifying here name of our variable DB, we need to pass to a persist only DB here, and here we want to console log out DB items. All right, let's save this, back to browsers. I'm sorry for this, but let's refresh and let's see now. Okay, so we are calling persist and we are providing DB. This is an instance of our class DB with the items, which is an empty array, and here we have a function save. Okay, so we are calling persist. Let's get into this function. So step into next function call, and you should jump into a persist function. Here you are getting your database. You can see your database with the items, and here you are calling save function on this database, right? So this should get us to database class, and we should call save function, and we should pass there our function here. Okay, so we are passing this callback function, where we are returning simply object with our first name, last name, and the age. So when I will jump inside, so I will click here, step into a next function call, I should get inside of a save function of a database, because that's what I called from a person. Now I'm getting into a save, and I get data callback. I'm getting this function you saw, this function that returns this object with the username and the age. All right, so here I am calling this function get data callback. I was passing here. Okay, so this function I passed here from a person. So when I will click here on this down arrow, I should get back to a person. I should execute this function. All right, so I'm getting indeed into this function here. You can see we're executing now this function that returns this data. But now when you will hover over first name, last name, and age, you will see here undefined cannot read properly. Read this error here. Cannot read properly first name of undefined. Undefined in this case is this context. That's why you're seeing error here, cannot read properly last name of undefined. Okay, so what's actually happening? When I will forward this will throw an error, nothing will happen. In a console log, you will see this error. Let's go back to our coding editors. And this is common problem with the callbacks. So let's see our person here, where we are passing our function. With this context, everything is fine. But this function is called within our database save function, and there we don't have access to this context of this class here of our person. So we need to do some improvements. All right, so let's see our persist on our person. So what we could do before calling save function here, we could assign this context to some variable and use this variable to call here first name and the last name and the age. So let's see it. I will remove this debugger here, and I will create here, let's say, const. I will call this variable self, and I will assign to a self this context. Now I will access self, and I will change this for a self. So self first name, self last name, and a self age. Let's save this now, and let's go back to our browsers. I will clear this out from my console. So let's clear this out from my console. Let's see sources. And now let's jump inside of a persist. All right, so you can see I'm assigning this to a self variable, which is undefined. I will jump here. Now self has this data, what had this before. Now I will jump inside of a save. Now I'm getting here my callback. Now I want to execute my callback, so get data callback. I will jump into this, should get me to a person. In the persist where I want to execute my function, which returns object with a username and an age. Now I'm accessing here a self, and you can see on a self I have access to a first name, last name, and an age. So I can execute this. Alright, I can return my data from this function. So you can see get data callback, the return to a data, this object with the age 100, username Filip Jarga, and I can push it to my items. Okay, so I'm pushing this data to my items, and you will see in the items I will have my first item. We will forward this. Now we are pushing a second data for our person 2. Let's forward everything, and you should see, and actually we are not writing here debugger, so I will write debugger here on the last spot. Let's refresh, and you will see when I will jump to the last spot here on the console log, you will see that we have two data in our items. So let's see here items, and you can see here our Filip Jarga and a Petra Green instance variables are in the items here in the database. Perfect. All right, I will show you one more better way how to fix this issue with this context. Let's go back to our coding editors. And instead of writing here is self variable and assign here this context, we could do one more thing. Actually, let's keep this here. So I will comment this out so you can still reference this code. So I will comment this and I will paste under the same code. But here I will remove this self. Okay, I'm removing from here self, and I will change this for arrow function. An arrow function is binding outer context of the function it was called from. Okay, so now I should bind here my actual context of my person class when I'm using arrow function. Okay, so let's save this and let's see it now. Let's go back to our browsers. Let's refresh. And now when you will jump into the person, you should see. All right, so let's see here. We are calling save. We are calling get data callback. So now I will get into the get data callback. I will get here. Now, oh, okay, I didn't change this self for this. My mistake. All right, you should change it back to this context. Okay, so now we should have here correct this context since we are using arrow function. Let's save this. Let's go back to our browsers. Okay, let's refresh. Okay, let's get here. Let's get into the persist. All right, now let's forward this execution. We should get here. We are calling callback, so let's get into the callback. So step into function call, step inside, and we are returning our data. Our browser is confused. Yeah, that's true. It doesn't display you actual context here, but internally you have here your this context of a person class. When I will forward this, you will see in a save I will get my data. Okay, actually like this. And we didn't write a breakpoint here again, so I will write here again a breakpoint. I will refresh this, and you will see that we have our actual items in a database. Okay, let's forward this. Let's save this. Okay, and you will see in our items we have our two data, so everything was working. You can see there are no errors in the console log, and this is much better way. You can even improve this even more further. I can remove this debugger from here, and as I told you, when I'm returning here one value, when I have here only one expression, I can change this, so I can remove these brackets here. All right, this return I can remove. Okay, and now it's a little bit maybe confusing. So I have this bracket for an object should be like this, and also end of this function. Also, let's write bracket for end of our function. I think this should be this arrow here, like this. So actually this will not work because we are returning object here, and arrow function is confused because it thinks that it is a function body. All right, this is brackets. So we need to wrap it instead of a normal brackets like this. Okay, this may be even more confusing for you, but you need to wrap it instead of a normal brackets, and here what you are returning from this function. Okay, so like this, when you're using arrow syntax, I can save this. Let's go back to our browsers. All right, let's wait for refresh, and you will see that you are not displaying any error. When I will forward this, I will get still my data. You can see DB items, we are getting our data back. Everything is working. All right, guys. So that should be it from this lecture. I showed you benefits and differences of the arrow function and the normal functions, how we are writing normal way. Of course, through the lectures, we'll be using normal functions, sometimes we'll be using arrow functions, and so on. You could see how you can bind this context. You can use either self variable, so before calling callback functions, we can bind this context to a self variable, and we can use self variable, or even more convenient, we can just use arrow function, and arrow function is binding outer context from a function it was called from. So in this case, we are binding here person context to our function here we are calling. Okay, so everything is working. We can return our user data and we can store them to a database. If you still don't understand here this concept, I encourage you to debug this code more, put here some console logs, or ask me in the comments or in a Slack chat. That should be it for this lecture. In the next lecture, we'll continue and we'll talk about more concepts. So guys, that should be it from this lecture, and I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.